Hello everyone. Like I said on Friday, I've got kind of a long drive ahead of me. I'm actually driving back right now. So if you hear any, a bunch of background noise or, strange sounds or whatever, it's probably car noises or, just highway sounds. Okay, this was going to be a rambling kind of get to know the creator, not the creator, I mean, you do that on your own time. Get to know me kind of thing. But I didn't have the time to do that, and that just turned into a long, stupid thing, and I didn't want to do that and waste your guys' time. So, instead, I thought that I would do something more along the lines of a rant, where, in order to clarify here, it's sort of a parenthetical statement. A ramble just kind of goes all over the place and has different subjects and, kind of, it just goes where it wants. And there's no guidance, no direction. A rant would be, railing on a single subject and things related to that single subject, and that's the extent of the information. It's just the one subject or, particular topic. So, with that said, this video will be more of a rant. And this will be just me kind of venting on just things, okay? So, let's take it from the top. Today, on Long Car Ride Rants, we're going to cover, more or less, what went wrong with the world / America. So, the big question especially in Western society, where we notice these things and people actually live long enough to remember the good old days. I use that term loosely. The big question is always, what happened to, quote, the good old days? And in some situations, that's an honest question. In other situations, that's a dumb question. Why would you want to go back to those days? So, in short, the short answer is, what went wrong with the world is we left God behind. We did. That's just the long and short of it. The world left God behind. If you look back to the 50s and 60s, and even before, the world wasn't perfect. No, we didn't have, real equality. We didn't have the world the way it should still be working towards. We didn't have even as good as we have it now. There was serious racial issues. There was all kinds of stress and problems that I can't even begin to grasp because, I didn't live through that. I wasn't around for it. My parents weren't around for it. They were kids. So, I can't relate myself to it, but I mean, I've read a book, okay? I've read a book. I've, heard people talk about how it was then. I know facts from history. I know that, women didn't have the same rights they do now. I know that non-white people didn't have the same rights they do now. There was, all kinds of things that needed to be fixed and have been fixed for the most part. But some things that were done right in those days. I know, I just railed on all the things that were done wrong in those days, but some things that were done right in those days. Topping that list are two things. Well, really, it can boil down to one thing. Respect. I know, because of the way a lot of people, different kinds of people were treated, respect wasn't really felt then from one person to the next. But in those days, the world as a whole had respect for God, for one, and there was respect taught within a family and for authority. You know, a father stayed. Fathers didn't abandon their children. You know, fathers stuck around for the most part. I mean, there were still absentee fathers. There were still, you know, guys who, you know, never stuck with the woman that they knocked up, and, you know, which that goes back to a bigger issue of, you know, sexual immorality, you know, and no respect for God's creation and what he intended it for. That's a whole separate, bigger issue that leads to this issue. But I'm going to start here. When children aren't taught respect in the home, you know, if you aren't taught to respect your parents and your mother and your father and your grandparents and your aunts and your uncles, you know, if you're not taught to respect people that deserve it, how can you possibly be expected to translate that to respecting the government or your employer or your spouse or God? You can't, because you've got no basis for anything. I will admit, I was raised in what they call a mixed home. The man who raised me was not my father. I called him Dad because he was my dad. He raised me. He taught me a lot about life. Most of it, of course, I didn't realize until, you know, I was grown. But he taught me a lot about life. That man was my dad. That man, above all else, taught me respect and honor. Even though, you know, he struggled with that himself, but he taught it to me. And that guides a lot of what I do today. You know, because there's a lot of things. If you just take those two things, respect and honor, and you just use those as your guideposts, that's it. That's all you need. Am I disrespecting someone who doesn't deserve it? Am I honoring someone who deserves it? You know, that's it. You know, you look at the world through those lenses, decisions get easier, your character gets better, your reputation gets better. You know, if you have those two guideposts in your life as how you live, then, you know, you're going to be good. You take any situation in life, you know, you find a wallet on the ground and it's got the ID card in it, you know where to find this person, you know how to get to them, you know, or it's got their phone number or whatever, or it's got the bank, you know, they've got their debit card or their checkbook or whatever. You can call and figure out where that person is, where, you know, or you can take it to the place and they can call the person for you, whatever. That decision to return it, to do the right thing, that is respecting the person who lost their wallet by restoring it to them, and that is honoring them. You're bringing honor to yourself by doing the right thing. That is the right thing to do. You get in an argument with your spouse or anyone for that matter, and you're just boiling mad and you're just ready to explode, and you just, you know, have to let it out somehow. The respectful thing to do is, instead of, you know, lashing out and harming them, the respectful thing to do would be to either, one, don't lash out at all, which would be the more honorable thing to do, or B, if you feel that you absolutely have to do something, you know, aim it at something, not someone. You're showing you respect that other person by not harming them just because you are in that condition. Because if you harm them because you just can't take it anymore, then that shows that you don't respect them. That's you putting yourself above them. That's not respect. And people aren't taught that, apparently. People aren't taught respect. People aren't taught honor. And that's what it all boils down to. Like, I know honor is like a jaded kind of idea. Like, people think that it's antiquated and that it's hokey or whatever the word you want to use for it. People think it's outdated, but it's not. Society is too far removed from it, because if people showed each other, just on a person-to-person level, showed each other respect, then that would change the whole landscape of the world on a societal level. If you just show people respect, like, there used to be civil discourse. You could have discussions with people about things, and it wouldn't turn into name calling and just trying to shout the other person down and screaming and screeching at the other person because you just don't want them to have the chance to talk. That's not respect. That's not honor. You want to honor somebody, give them the chance to talk. You want them to respect you, respect them by listening to what they have to say. That's how simple that is. And it's not that hard to do. Like, be a decent person. Like, go to kindergarten rules. One person talks at a time. Everybody gets to talk. That's respect. That's fair. And then you have, either, and not everything has to end in a result. Something doesn't always have to happen from your discussion. You can have a discussion about a thing and talk for 3 hours with that person, giving your best case and showing all this research and all these opinions and all these, things. And if you walk away from there and neither one of you have changed, that's fine. But you've stopped and you've listened and you've talked. That's the thing. You communicated with another person that didn't agree with you. That's how you build respect between two people. You might think that their idea is totally bonkers. But you took the time to listen. People used to have respect for another person's property. You used to be able to leave something, not your valuables, don't be naive. You can't leave your valuables sitting out. But these home invasions and these, horrible kinds of crimes, they've always happened, they always will. But the disrespect that goes along with them, vandalism is such an awful thing. Like, okay, talking about respecting authority and respecting God, There was a time when, even by non-believers or even atheists, there was a time when any house of worship, you knew, or you could expect for the most part, that that house of worship was a safe place. There didn't have to be armed guards at churches. There were no metal detectors or security patrols at a church. If you damaged a church, then you were a low person. Like, nobody wanted to deal with you if you were the kind of lowlife that would vandalize a place of worship, a sanctuary of any kind. That's just not a thing that was done. Even in the 90s, when I was a kid, churches of any kind were reverent places. They were places that you didn't, you don't swear in a church. You don't drink alcohol. You don't take alcohol onto church property. Unless it's the, communion wine. That's different. But you didn't have beer or liquor. Certainly not the parishioners. If you're a Catholic, I guess the priest kept some, but you didn't do drugs. You didn't do those kinds of things. There was a special kind of reverence for a place of worship, whether Catholic or Jewish or whatever, but that's gone. There was respect. There was decency. And now the world thrives on immorality and lewdness and debauchery. And that's what matters now. What can I get out of life? What can I get from this? What's my pleasure that I'm going to receive for this thing? If I don't get something out of it, I'm not going to do it. And that is a problem. Do things because God gave you things. Give to other people because you've got enough. If you've got enough to get by, and if you make more than your bills are, then some of that extra should go somewhere. It's as simple as that. Charity. That was a thing. Charity wasn't because you loved this person. That factored into some charity, but the givingness, that was because you knew you had more than what you needed, and it was the right thing to do. You did it because it was right, because you knew that another person deserved the respect to be able to survive. And it shouldn't take the government interfering to get there. But because people, okay, this is where it's going to feel like Father's Day a couple of weeks early here. Men have failed, and women have failed to pick up the slack. Now, this isn't going to be popular with anybody. Men have the job, the duty, the responsibility, the honor of leading their houses. A man leads his house like Christ leads the church. A woman honors her husband like the church honors God, honors Christ. The difference is, the big pivotal difference is, God never lets us down. God never doesn't do what's right for his bride. But when a woman and a family are let down by their man, then if the woman cannot get the man to correct it, the woman must correct it herself. If your man's not gonna, fix the door that doesn't shut right, then ladies, get yourself a hammer, some pliers, and a screwdriver, and get to work. It needs to get done. It's just as simple as that. Men have failed in their responsibility of bringing up godly families, respectful families. If a man makes a point of knowing and understanding the scripture and applying it to his life, then he will be able to lead his family in the way that he ought. And his family will go the way that they should. The world will be turned around quickly. But I'm almost to where I'm going. So, rant over. Long story short, God, honor, and respect are gone from the country. And that's the problem. That's why we are the way we are. And that is why the world has gone to hell in a handbasket. And that is how we fix it. It's by getting back to God and honor and respect.